Hello, my friends. Rob Roselli coming to you once again on the Not Fox News Network, today being Tuesday, May the 2nd, 2017. And of course, website boxofsunglasses.com, email info@boxofsunglasses.com, Twitter @RobRoselli, and of course, Facebook, Rob Roselli, a numerical 1. In the last several shows, we went through Matthew 24 line by line, and a lot of the history behind it, the stone temples, the real meaning of the tribulation, the real meaning of the wrath of God, all sorts of symbolism that are present throughout Matthew 24 that you don't necessarily get from these so-called biblical experts. Okay, and you can see all those shows in the descriptions. Again, if you go on boxofsunglasses.com, there's a Not Fox News Network that brings you here. And there's a Not Fox News Network link that brings you to the YouTube channel. You can go watch all those videos, as well as all the other past videos on subjects ranging from Robert Christian, the Invisible College, the Rosicrucians, you name it, it's there, on any aspect of the quote conspiracy. And as usual, just a quick review of the 3 basic principles. I would try to keep this simple. It's only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, most Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here. But 3 basic principles. Number 1 is the Bible is the core of this show, as well as your life. Okay, and you're never going to be perfect at that, but that's it. Okay, it's an all or nothing proposition. It's true or it's not true. Yes, yay or nay, black or white, east or west. There's no middle ground. There's no room for negotiation. There's no what is the Catholic Church, the so-called Christian Catholic Church, calling it now theistic evolution or some kind of crap that are trying to negotiate with the world or meet the world with the middle ground. It doesn't work like that. Okay, so be that as it may, that is basic principle number 1, is the Bible is the core of everything, including the quote conspiracy. Number 2 is Israel, national Israel, is not God's chosen people. Okay, that throws so many people off, and so many of these charlatans and so-called biblical experts, I just get this wrong. It's so wrong. I don't even want to. I've got onto that on several of the past videos, and just what lousy theology that is. And that's one of the topics about the fig tree that's in Matthew 24 and the real meaning of the reestablishment of national Israel in 1948, and the symbolism of the fig tree as explained in Matthew 24. As well as Matthew 21, and that was all gone through, okay, and it's all there. And number 3, it segues into point number 3, is that there's no way that Mystery Babylon of Revelation 17 and 18 is not the United States. It has to be the United States of America, and specifically New York City. There's no debating that, okay. And the link and a line-by-line breakdown of Revelation 17-18 is, again, on my site, boxofsunglasses.com. And speaking of that, let's just take a quick look. Okay, this being May 2nd, so yesterday was May 1st, or May Day. Now this is a so-called holiday around the world. Okay, and I guess we can begin with the Illuminati, the Bavarian Illuminati. Okay, because the May Day so-called holiday is celebrated by so-called atheistic, and I say that in quotes, communist, atheistic communists, socialists, World Workers' Day in Russia, okay, in the old Soviet Union. I'm not sure about these days, but World Workers' Day, the establishment of of Socialist International. It's also a holiday for the nature freaks, the Gaia, Beltane, which is a holiday out in the middle of the desert somewhere, okay, and they worship something called Burning Man, okay, which has a lot of symbolism, okay, in common with the Old Testament Baal, okay, which isn't a good thing, but it's basically nature worship, the whore goddess Isis and her sidekick Osiris, and we'll kind of tie all this together. But such a divergent group celebrating this so-called special high holy day. Basically, let's just face it, every communist, socialist, environmentalist, crackpot, kook, weirdo, and freak kind of conglomerates under this this umbrella of May Day. So let's go back to the beginning. Okay, now May Day, what it represents in mythology, mythological lore, in the month of May itself, okay, May Day is halfway between, more or less, the spring equinox and the summer solstice. Okay, the summer solstice, of course, being the longest day of the year, symbolic of harvest and summer and warm weather, and the sun god Osiris, or Apollo at his high point. Okay, and of course, spring, indicates, is more symbolic of Isis, or the female goddess, okay, as she awakens, nature awakens. And halfway between those two holidays, you get May 1st, or May Day, or Maya. Now, the word May is based on the word Maya, which is another word for the whore goddess, or the whore of Babylon, Isis. In parentheses, by the way, you'll see, just to harken back a couple minutes, you'll see why there's no doubt the United States is the mystery Babylon of Revelation 17 and 18. Okay, there's just so much evidence out there. There's so much going on. There's so much has gone on, and the United States is responsible for, along with its evil little baby sibling, England over there. It's, intellectual sidekick, the English, but the United States more so than anybody else. But in parentheses, so you have this Maya. Okay, now she was one of the consorts of Zeus. Okay, who in various mythologies is associated with the sun god Apollo, or the main god of course, the Egyptian Parthenon. Now, in some mythologies and some people that discuss mythology, they equate Zeus with God, the real God of the Bible. Okay, they have his characteristics of God, but we don't want to get into that right now. Let's just, for the time being, mythology is very confusing. It's just, you read different mythological books and different descriptions of all these so-called gods, and it's a train wreck trying to figure some of the stuff out and trace family trees. Okay, which isn't the case with the Bible. Jesus, it's very cut and dry who he is, or you believe or you don't believe. You're free to choose not to believe, but the point is, it's cut and dry. It's easy to figure out. Okay, not so in mythology. But anyway, not to go off on a tangent right now. Let's just talk in the consensus. So Zeus is the sun god of ancient Greece. Now, one of his consorts, he was a pretty horny guy, so he was out there kind of, let's say, engaging in extramarital affairs with all kinds of goddesses of the Greek Parthenon, the Greek pantheon of goddesses, and one of those happens to be Maya. Okay, now the combination of Zeus and Maya gave us the Greek god of wisdom and music and logic and travel, known as Hermes. Okay, now it just so happens that Hermes, and I'm off on a tangent right now, I have probably several hundred pages of information on the Greek god Hermes, or the equates to the Egyptian god Thoth, or the Roman god Mercury, okay, which puts some, again, a little confusion here. Basically puts him on more or less the messenger of the gods, the son of God, Horus. Okay, there's some overlap there, but be that as it may. So you got Maya plus Zeus produces Hermes, which echoes, by the way, this concept of Eve and Satan having the baby Cain in the Garden of Eden. Okay, because remember what Jesus said in John chapter 8. He's talking about Lucifer, or Satan, who you of your father is the devil. He was a murderer from the beginning. And who was the first murderer was none other than Cain. So he's making a direct correlation between Cain and Satan. So if you go back and you reread Genesis chapter 3, you see that, well, Eve conceived. Okay, she had a son known as Cain, which we could say is Hermes in this case. Eve would be Maya, okay, and then Satan would be Zeus. Okay, so he'd be reborn in the form of Cain, which, if you read mythologies, that concept of the father mating with his wife/sister and having a son that would be manifested, then he would die off. be the death of reason or wisdom, okay, but then be reborn in the form of a son, Thoth, Hermes, Mercury. Okay, but let's just focus on the subject at hand, that being the Greek god Hermes. Okay, so the point is that there's a lot of parallel between the accounts of the book of Genesis, okay, Genesis chapter 3, and the origin of many, quote, mythologies, okay. Really what it is they're just echoes of the biblical account, okay. You know, of course, many atheists and Harvard and Ivy League kind of doofuses will say, well, the Bible came later and ripped off from all these other mythologies, which is fine. You can have that. That's not really the subject of tonight's show, and I don't want to get into that, but remember, the Bible is cut and dry, okay? Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, okay, Zechariah 9:9, and there's no mistaking who he was, all right? He wasn't hidden, okay? There's no confusion as to who he is or where he came from or what his origins are. Now, you're free to not to believe, and most people do, that's fine. It's not fine, but they're free to not believe, but the point is just there's no confusion, okay? You read his mythologies, it's pervasive. The confusion is pervasive, okay? But I digress. Maya, Zeus equals Hermes. Now, Hermes is a very interesting character if you go again to the RC Christian page. Now, Robert Christian just so happens to be the founder of these Georgia Guidestones, okay, which calls for population reduction. The environmentalist wacko, this concept of genocidal destruction of a large portion of mankind, which has manifested itself in the so-called environmental movement and these nature-worshipping weirdos, which we'll get to in a minute. These, part of this May Day celebration, right? Their anti-10 commandments are right here, okay? And this concept of let these guidestones lead to an age of reason, okay, brought to us by Robert Christian, who I equate to the Greek god Hermes and Thoth and Mercury and others, okay? And you can read about that again on the Robert Christian page of my site, boxofsunglasses.com, okay? So there's tangible stuff going on here that's attached to current events. For example, how are you going to get the world's population down to 500 million people? Well, you're not going to do it with just Hitler, okay, although Hitler's discussed in his book, okay, the Un-American Genocidal Complex, what we call the deep state now, I guess is the latest catchphrase for it, but Hitler's too slow, Stalin's too slow, okay, spiking the smallpox vaccine with the AIDS virus is slow, okay. How are you going to get there? But by nuclear war, by psychopathic drive for World War III, which we're seeing unfold before our eyes as we speak today, May 2nd, 2017, is push for chaos and world war and destruction, or the phoenix rising from the ashes, the Rothschild, okay, Economist magazine, okay, with all this symbolism right here. Now Osiris, or Zeus, okay, or the father of Hermes and the consort of Maya, another equivalent is this phoenix rising from the ashes, okay, and Osiris was also associated with agriculture and corn. There was a god of corn and reeds and wheat, okay, the number 10, okay, seven heads and 10 horns, okay, the phi, we went through this last week. On the last several shows, the concept of phi, or the 0.618, or 18 divided by 6, okay, or 6 plus 6 plus 6, remember? Revelation 13:8 says to count or calculate the number of the beast, okay? It's 603 score and 6. It doesn't say, yeah, you line up for your stupid, 666 mark on your forehead. No, it says count or calculate. It says the number of a man. Now, number of a man, that would be Cain, wouldn't it? Okay, the original Satan, who was set with a mark on his head. Okay, going all the way back to Genesis, and I don't want to go off on that right now. We're trying to keep this tight to the May Day discussion, but anyway, so it's all right here, okay, where this is all kind of circling around. So in other words, the anarchist, so this anarchism, okay, that's emblematic of May Day, the nature worship, the communism. Now we're getting to the core of the quote conspiracy, okay, and we're going to see, and hopefully we are seeing already, that it's, again, the magnitude and the source of all this, the best place to read about this is right in the Bible, which is hopefully sitting on a shelf somewhere in your house. So you can verify a lot of the stuff I'm saying. Okay? So that's kind of the quick mythological Cliff Notes version of the source of May, or Maya. So May 1st, again, is a celebration of the earth goddess, or the whore goddess, or the whore Babylon, known as Maya, okay, or in Egypt as Ishtar, Isis, Mesopotamia, Inanna, I think, or Ishtar, okay, Diana, Artemis, Greek, Roman, okay, Columbia, okay, is another name for the female goddess. Just quick side note discussed on this show many times. Columbia, the female goddess, District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., okay, you got the congressional building there, okay, with the womb of Columbia, or Isis, I think what's the goddess Minerva on top, facing a 6,660 foot high with a 666 inch four-sided base, known phallus symbol of Osiris, okay, the male plus the female, just like Satan and Lucifer back there in in Genesis chapter 3. You got that right in Washington, D.C. That's known as the Washington Monument, okay? But anyway, so you got this concept of this male plus female. You have it happening anywhere, and that's really the real meaning of May. So what is besides the mythology involved, what is the most prominent group? This is like conspiracy theory 101. What was founded on May 1st, 1776, but the Bavarian Illuminati. Now, of course, Illuminati, we've discussed it. It's not some stupid, some nonsensical or some harmless group, like Tom Hanks in the Da Vinci Code. It's not, they kind of throw stuff like out there to kind of throw you off the trail, like it's all just nonsense. It's just conspiracy theory, There's your Illuminati. Your eyes shall be opened. All right, it's basically, that's what it is. Again, going back to Genesis chapter 3, as God said, you shall not eat the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The day God said, the day you eat of it, you shall die. But Satan told Eve, the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be open. So that's where we get the concept of an open eye, or illumination, or Illuminati. Now, they were founded on May 1st, 1776, and they were a radical, basically your, Bavarian, a region of Germany, okay, by a guy by the name of Adam Weishaupt, okay, and that's in all the history books, okay, it's not conspiracy theory, it really was a group, okay, in a territory known as Bavaria, okay, and Adam Weishaupt, now he basically was the original, let's say 20th century, 21st century Anglo-American progressive, useful idiot, dumbass, Ivy League communist, stupid bastard, useful idiot, whatever you want to call him. All right, he was basically the forerunner to all those people, but more importantly, he was before all that, before all the Harvard, Yale, Columbia, crowd, the Ivy League crowd, the Cal Berkeley crowd in the United States. Before he got to them, there was 6 core beliefs, I believe it was, of the Illuminati. Okay, that was the abolition of patriotism, the abolition of national borders, abolition of religion, the abolition of family, of property rights, and I think another one was an inheritance tax, okay? And I think I got all those, but that's basically, if you read that, I said, wait a second, Illuminati, that sounds a lot like communism. Well, yeah, because that's what it was. It set the framework for communism, and Karl Marx he just kind of conglomerated Weishaupt's theories, and let's go way back to Plato, by the way, this idea of an ideal world socialist state and all this other crap goes all the way back to the Greek so-called philosophers, but that never worked in the history of mankind. So they may say they're smart. Harvard may say those people are smart, but the Bible says they're pretty stupid. The so-called Greek philosophers, and judging by the results of communist countries, I'd have to say the Bible is right. Okay. Remember, I think it's 1 Corinthians. If you go 1 Corinthians 1-3, the wisdom, the maximum intellectual ability of the world is foolishness to God. Okay, and you can read about that in 1 Corinthians, say chapters 1 through 3, but not to go off on that right now. So there's your May 1st, 1776. There's your clue number one. Excuse me, the Bavarian Illuminati. Okay, which basically, and the way they kind of hid themselves, they were exposed by the Bavarian government, who tried to warn the other governments of Europe, who found it hard to believe there was such a group and they were that brazen. But unfortunately, the other countries of Europe did not heed the warnings of Bavaria, and they kind of, scattered like cockroaches. They ran out of Bavaria and they ended up in places like France. Now, 1776, and what do you get a few years later? But the anarchist French Revolution. Okay, and I was reading on some books, just as an aside, about the French Revolution. I mean, the Bavarian, the Illuminati, spread to France. They were right in the middle, along with the historical Robert Christian, by the way, Christian Rosenkreutz, okay? Another parentheses, sidebar, okay? You literally, I got multiple sources, literally can't trace this guy, this Robert Christian, okay? He literally jumps across the centuries of history, and I'm not making that up. I'm paraphrasing multiple well-known authors and historians. But anyway, one of his, let's just say one of his physical, according to some historians, let's just put it that way, he lived in the 1500s, he lived, in this century, the 12th century, but according to some historians, he lived in the 1700s and was deeply involved with the Illuminati and the French Revolution. Okay, now if you read about the French Revolution, you go back and read about historians at the time, and real historians like Nesta Webster, I believe is the woman's name. I started reading her book, World Revolutions, and unfortunately I don't have that in front of me right now, but I started reading a little about the French Revolution, and, this historian makes the point that, the French Revolution was the first time in history, and it just kind of blew me away when she said this, was the first time in history that grievances were created in the population for the sole purpose of exploiting those grievances. Now think about what that's saying, okay? That just sounds just like these stupid college kids, okay, with all their problems and their grievances, so-called, and they're being exploited, and they're turning into these stupid anarchist groups that kind of showed up on the streets of Portland and New York City and other places yesterday on May Day, and started throwing firebombs at the cops and this sort of thing. So it's just what I believe what we're seeing right now is the early stages of the anarchist French Revolution, which just had no purpose. Okay, it was supposedly a revolution to establish reason. Okay, they honored the goddess reason. Okay, so as a matter of fact, I think they broke into Chartres Cathedral, took down the statue of the Virgin Mary, which is just an offshoot of the aforementioned Isis or Maya or whatever, but let's not go there right now. But they tore down, they broke into Chartres Cathedral, and they replaced the statue of the Virgin Mary with the goddess of reason. So, just as an aside, when you hear humanists or these progressives or New Age wackos talk about an age of reason or human reason, run, don't walk, okay? Just like the Georgia Guidestones, let these Guidestones lead us to an age of reason, okay? You can't get to that age of reason without a lot of death in between, okay? With a lot of just phoenix rising from the ashes. That's your age of reason, okay? A reduction of 90% of the world's population, okay? The French Revolution was a mini version of that, okay? But we're going to see it, a amplified version of the French Revolution, and in fact, we're starting to see it already. And the same groups, okay, the Illuminati, are controlling these useful idiots down below. And we'll get to that in a couple minutes, but this is history repeating itself. I mean, the French Revolution was a pointless exercise in bloodshed and guillotines, and tens of thousands of people were killed, and by all records, historical records, okay, if you go back and read about France before the Revolution, yeah, there was corruption, just like the United States, the scummy scumbag politicians, and but by all accounts, I mean, life in France was not that terrible, certainly to the point where it justified the violence and the nonsensical chaos of the French Revolution. Okay, Louis XVI was willing to capitulate on some things, okay, but that wasn't good enough for these anarchist wacko losers, okay, these predecessors of the Columbia University useful idiot, stupid ass, dumbass leftist college students, okay, the same people. That wasn't good enough for them. They went haywire, okay. They took over the Bastille. According to some historical accounts, people in Paris didn't even know, in France didn't even know what the hell was going on. All this stuff was started out of nowhere, these anarchists, and before you knew it, they toppled the French government, and anarchy ruled the day, okay? And that was it. And the Freemasons, okay, with their new Illuminati friends, who they welcomed, okay, Illuminati infiltrated Freemasonry. It's just like socialism and communism. They say, really a socialist. All a socialist is a peaceful communist. All a Freemason is a peaceful Illuminati, okay? They both worship the same things. They both worship the same God. They both believe in the same pyramid. Climbing the same pyramid, if you look at the symbolism of Freemasonry, it's the same exact thing, okay? Climbing the Egyptian pyramid to different degrees and all that other stuff, okay? Maybe they don't advocate the outright violence that was the Bavarian Illuminati, which led to things like the French Revolution, but it's still the same. The godless, quote, age of reason, humanism, okay? And one of the sayings of the French Revolution: liberty, equality, fraternity. That's right out of the Freemason. That's the Freemasons: liberty, equality, fraternity. Okay, I guess with communism, I guess they were all equal. And somebody didn't like it, they chopped your head off. It's as simple as that. Okay, Louis XVI, I think, was amongst the first, and his wife Marie Antoinette, who supposedly, with the arrogance, let them eat cake and all this sort of thing. Well, I'm getting into that right now, but even Robespierre, who I think invented the guillotine, even he wasn't radical enough for these radical losers, okay? These predecessors to the Columbia Ivy League a-hole college students we see today in the United States. It was just a bloodbath, okay? It didn't go anywhere for whatever it was, I think 4 or 5 years, whatever it lasted. And then Napoleon Bonaparte came in, and France was a dictatorial government was established under Napoleon Bonaparte anyway. So there was no point to it, all right? It was anarchy, okay? But again, the Bavarian Illuminati, founded May 1st, 1776, we're right in the middle of it. Now you fast forward to whenever Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto. I don't know the exact date, it's 1800 somehow. But Karl Marx was another loser, okay? Just like Bernie Sanders, okay? Just another dumbass intellectual, couldn't make it in private business, was a mooch, just a miserable creep. Okay, the only thing he could do was tear down other people, just like Bernie Sanders, okay, is an example, okay, can't hold a job anywhere in private industry, as he found out. So what does he do? He goes and works for the government and tears down other people that actually do something for a living besides work for the government, okay, and that's what he does. Just a dumbass, useless loser, all right? So that's basically Karl Marx. Okay, he wrote the Communist Manifesto, but again, if you look at the 10 points of the Communist Manifesto, and they're a little bit more expansive than the Illuminati, but the same basic thing, the same basic foundation. Okay, and by the way, in chapter 2, I think it is, of my original book, They Live, Great Society of the Undead. Okay, that's this book here. All right, available as a PDF download on my website. I go into it. Okay, the Communist Manifesto quiz. This is almost 10 years ago. Okay, you take the tenets of the Communist Manifesto: the inheritance tax, government control of education, destruction of religion, yada, yada, yada. You go down the list. The United States was 10 for 10, batting 1,000 on the Communist Manifesto. Except the problem is Karl Marx had a lot of very rich, powerful friends, like the British Rothschilds, all these other sorts of groups. Okay, which means communism had a lot of support by the likes of J.P. Morgan. Okay, J.P. Morgan, by the way, the Freemasonic temple, known as St. John's Divine Cathedral right here in New York City, with the same, the same illuminated, all-seeing eye dedicated to Osiris right here. The capitalist pyramid, yada, 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 all that other stuff. But anyway, Karl Marx had a lot of powerful associations with people like the Rothschild and Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan. So you might say, well, why would they, communism is for the masses and it's anti-capitalist. That's the dumbest thing. That's for the a-holes at Harvard and Yale to give to their stupid kids, dropping 50 grand a year to get dumber at these Ivy League schools. That's crap for them. Of course, Rockefeller and Rothschild and Morgan and the rest of them love communism, because if you think about it, communism is not for the downtrodden. It's for the elite core central government to take control of the masses. All right, eliminate competition. John D. Rockefeller, the original Rockefeller, competition is sin. Well, one way you get rid of competition, you get the government behind you and you squash all the people that oppose you, like the Affordable Care Act, for example. But anyway, which is, it's an offshoot of fascism, but we don't go off on that right now. But so communism wasn't an uprising of the masses. It was just a dumbass Karl Marx inheriting a philosophy and a belief system from the Bavarian Illuminati, who were associated, as I just said, with this really unseemly, mysterious character known as Robert Christian, who has a lot in common with the Greek god Hermes, who has a lot in common with the Satan of the book of Genesis. So do you see where all this is going? Okay, but anyway, so what is the number one holiday in these so-called communist countries but May Day, okay, or May 1st, World Workers' Day, World Socialist Day, whatever you want to call it, okay? So you get that whole thing going on, okay? And then more recently, I believe, and I don't know the exact origins of it, but it's worked its way into the so-called New Age / environmental movement, okay? These nature-worshipping freaks and weirdos, okay? Which includes a lot of these climate change people, these podunks. Climate change people, by the way, is Al Gore's book. There's a link on my site, The Inconvenient Scientific Method, and I don't want to go off. I'll just give you the link to that real quick. I don't remember what page it's on, but oh yeah, New Age Nature Worship. Okay, there's a link on there, page 11 on my site. I go through very carefully Al Gore's, book, An Inconvenient Truth. It's just a thin veneer, just a very thin veneer over these nature freaks, these genocidal maniacs, these weirdos, these non-scientific crackpots and losers, and the climate change, radical environmental movement. And of course, I'm not saying there's not legitimate environmental problems and they don't need to be solved, and the government has a place in that, I believe, but of course with logical, reasonable, scientific, objective people involved, not kooky climate change weirdos, okay, that populate the environmental movement. But what is the most popular day? One of the most popular days in the New Age / environmental movement, but again, it's May 1st, okay, which is known in many places as Beltane, okay, where they go and they worship out, and I think in the Nevada desert, they worship a huge, I think it's just a wicker statue. Has a lot of characteristics, a lot in common with Baal, the ancient Canaanite god Baal, to whom the Canaanites and God's chosen people like King Manasseh sacrificed their children to. Remember, he said, when they passed through the fire, they sacrificed their children to the fire. This is what they were talking about, okay, sacrificing their children to the burning man or the wicker man or Baal. So we've just reinvented Baal worship out in the open and called it Beltane. Now, of course, today, we don't burn babies in the wicker man, at least not yet, but we're damn close, okay? There was a report a few years ago out of, I think it was Oregon, of course. Oregon was nothing but California North, the stupid, useful idiot, liberal, French Revolution losers of California moved north and infected Oregon and ruined that state. But anyway, there was a report out a few years ago that aborted fetuses were being sent to burnt for, quote, clean energy in clean energy recycling plants out in Oregon. Okay, so abortion, which is again nothing but child sacrifice to the, or because it's controlling the population, of course. I mean, the real origins. Don't tell the stupid asses in the Black Lives Matter, and their allies in this. What is it? Anti-fascist a-holes. Don't tell them this, but the real origins of abortion, at least in this country, was the elimination of black people by the racist Margaret Sanger, okay, who openly wrote and talked about eliminating black people through abortion. Known as the American Birth Control League, we know this today as Planned Parenthood. But anyway, for the population control zealots, this is saving the planet. Abortion is good because 50 million less babies is 50 million less humans doing harm to their Mother Earth, or their Earth Mother, or Gaia, or Diana, or Columbia, or Maya, or Isis, okay, or the whore of Babylon, okay. So now, remember before I said hopefully the picture's starting to emerge of why there's no doubt the United States is the Mystery Babylon of Revelation, okay, because just think about what I'm saying here. Okay, we've taken this philosophy of Illuminism or Illuminati, which is nothing but blatantly related to the Genesis chapter 3. Okay, in a nation that was founded legitimately as a Christian nation, by the way, and I don't want to go off on that right now, but so we started out as a legitimate, God-fearing Christian nation. Okay, and this septic, this human dung, this waste known as the liberal communist Illuminati movement infected our college campuses, courtesy of the Rockefeller Rothschild money trust, known as, they did this through their so-called tax-exempt foundations, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and today George Soros, the Ford Foundation. Okay, so all this Rothschild money filtered its way. So you can kind of see, but, in parallel to all that, not only the environmental, the population control zealots, the population control abortion zealots of the environmental movement, but communism didn't have its start. It wasn't the downtrodden in the Soviet Union or China, these places. No, it had its start in Wall Street and in the intellectual halls of the Ivy League schools and Oxford University over in England. Okay, that's where it works. It works in the classroom, and of course, if you're in charge of the whole thing, it works really well. If you're the Politburo in the old Soviet Union, if you're Fidel Castro in Cuba, this other maniac over in North Korea, if your communism works out really well for you, or if you can just talk about it, this utopia crap in some sheltered classroom in Harvard, then everything works out fine. Yeah, it's great. Everybody's equal. Everybody gets equal. Everybody's ice cream, butterflies, and love is all for all. Nobody works. It's just one big community. It works in the halls of Columbia and Cornell and Harvard, but of course, again, showered by lots of money from the tax-exempt foundations, Rockefeller, Morgan, Carnegie, Ford, and the rest of them. Okay, Anthony Sutton wrote a book called Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, where he historically documents the origin of the Russian Revolution, and then later the Chinese Revolution was right here in Wall Street, and academia in the United States. Now that's responsible. You're talking hundreds of millions of deaths. Okay. Not to mention, again, as I just mentioned, that offshoot of communism, which is National Socialism. The only difference, the basic difference between, Hitler, National Socialism, and International Socialism, which is communism, is Hitler was more of a German nationalist. He believed in the same exact stuff as the Illuminati. Worship of nature, government control of everything. Okay. Except he just believed in it exclusively for Germany. He didn't want it spread. He wanted to spread around the world, but under the control of Germany. But that's the basic difference. Other than that, National Socialism, Nazi can be more obvious. Can these college kids be any dumber? Okay, National Socialism or corporatism is an offshoot of fascism. That's Obamacare. Okay, that's communism. That's the very definition So it's hard to even describe it, trying to fathom this, how stupid these people really are. Okay, these May 1st Beltane World Workers' Day losers. You're working for Wall Street. Okay, you're anarchists, you're useful idiots. Just like in the old Soviet Union, you took down the Tsar. Okay, which again, just like with the French, wasn't far from perfect, but I'm going to say no worse than these corrupt scumbags we got in Washington, D.C. right now. Maybe even better, but be that as it may, took down these nations and installed these anarchist/communist regimes. And of course, just like anything communist, okay, once the euphoria, once the emotion is gone, okay, once that momentum is gone, everybody's, fights and, oh yeah, workers' rights and for the people, then you start cracking skulls, just like Stalin, just like Hitler. Okay, then reality sets in, because these people know, just like Hitler with the brown shirts and Stalin, getting rid of all his enemies. Stalin was very paranoid, okay? The last things these communist/socialist leaders want is a bunch of revolutionaries, a bunch of useful idiots, a bunch of brown shirts, a bunch of Antifa, Columbia University douchebags, firebombs, losers running around with no revolution to fight, okay? Just like the Night of the Long Knives in Hitler's Germany, okay? It was, Hitler wanted to get rid of the leadership of the brown shirts. Had the Night of the Long Knives, which I think was a few nights, but anyway, just killed the entire leadership. Took whatever brown shirts took the hint, went and worked for him and went to work in the concentration camps or whatever, these thugs, or, were killed off or whatever, but Hitler got rid of them, man. And then your reality of communism, which is centralized control, sets in. Just like the Soviet Union, the reality sets in, okay? But Wall Street loves this because they control it, ultimately, just like they control the Soviet Union, just like they control China. They may be losing control of those nations in the 21st century, which I don't want to really get into right now, but the fact of the matter is, historically speaking, those so-called communist regimes were created right here. Again, by the Wall Street banks, the Federal Reserve, Wall Street banks, and academia, so-called. Okay, so you tell me, in history, in world history, in 200 years, what nation has been done more evil than the United States? Okay, and I know I sound like some anarchist left-wing, but again, this isn't be done. This is my country, okay? My country was founded in 1776, not May 1st, but July 4th, and the Constitution and all that, but it's been overtaken, let's just say, the last 100 years under the Federal Reserve System, okay? What evil has this nation wrought in the last 100 years, okay? Hitler, Mao, Stalin, abortion, AIDS, endless wars, okay? Evolution, okay? I hadn't even talked about evolution. Evolution was I should probably talk about that. I should talk about it earlier, but anyway, evolution was the science, the quote science of the communists, okay? Which means it wasn't science. It's just like I've said, and I got the evolution debates. Again, those are posted on my site, again, boxofsunglasses.com, and you can listen to these intellectual asswipes, and I'm just, the words escape me. It's probably not the best, but whatever, okay? Evolution is not science. Evolution makes the assumption that God doesn't exist and builds their science around that assumption, because they don't use there's no valid scientific laws. The laws of motion, Newton's laws of motion, don't work with evolution. The established laws of energy inherent in the laws of thermodynamics don't apply to evolution. The law of biogenesis, that you can't get life from non-life, okay, evolution just ignores all that, okay? But it was the quote science of the communists, of Karl Marx and all these other people, because it got rid of God, okay? By getting rid of God, what steps into that void? But, reason, or liberty, equality, fraternity, or your humanism, or secular humanism, or whatever you want to call it, okay? So there's your quote conspiracy, okay? And it's all summarized in that one day called May Day, at least in today's. So, the most important thing right now, because the anarchist, I'm talking about your Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, psychopathic, demonic psychopaths running this country and running the world right now, are hell-bent on giving us World War III. The real people that gave us communism. Okay, so I'd say right now the best thing you can do if you're listening to this right now is God's simple salvation plan. Because we're sure not going to stop it. I'm not going to stop it. I'm not sure it was ever meant to be stopped. But there it is. Okay. So, again, especially if you're living in the United States, I'm going to say this, and I've said it before, you need not worry about I don't think you need to worry about the mark of the beast, personally. I can do a whole show, and I've discussed this in the past. The mark of the beast, there's much more to it than some stupid barcode or some microchip. And yeah, look, there might be other stuff in the works. There might come a time where, the economy collapses and, you have to get some kind of chip. All right. But the mark of the beast has been around since the Garden of Eden, okay? The people that openly worship Satan, like Karl Marx and Hitler, Adam Weishaupt, the Bushes, the Skull and Bones crowd, okay? The so-called Christian conservative Bush family. Just going to say maybe they're not microchipped. You think they've accepted the mark of Satan? I'm going to say, yeah, they have, because it's more of a mentality, okay? It's a belief that somehow you can become God, believe in these 10 commandments, and you get to decide who lives and who dies. These people are shot. Okay, and they really believe this. This is why the world is as crazy as it seems, because it's being run by the liar and the father of lies, Satan, who has nothing better to do than take as many people down with him before he meets his eternal torment, which is really the point of the whole Bible. In his eyes, why not? Why not take as many people as I can with me? Why not try to fight God in the Battle of Armageddon? At the end, I might as well try. I got nothing else. I got nothing else going for me except a life of eternal torment after the lake of fire is over, which we've discussed on this show. The lake of fire. Hell is not perpetual fire. It's perpetual darkness, but not fire. But anyway, I don't want to go off. That's kind of off the subject, but so anyway, the point is, Mystery Babylon disappears, or the United States disappears before the Battle of Armageddon, I believe. Okay, so, or the rapture. Don't listen to any of that crap, because things are going to start to suck here in this country soon as the chaos is implemented. Remember, to get the order out of the chaos, you got to have the chaos first. You got to have the fires. All right. By the way, the Freemasons, just in case you were wondering, there's the Eye of Lucifer right here between the two columns of Freemasonry. The five-pointed star, the great geometer of the universe, the sun and the moon, the male and the female. The moon is usually associated with the female or reason or Isis, so there's all that symbolism, but just review this again real quick. Remember the fires of chaos. There you are, the United States economy. There you are, people of the United States burning to death as the elite rise from the ashes under their god Apollo, Osiris, Hermes, Satan, Lucifer, whatever you want to call it. All right. So, Mystery Babylon is pretty much squashed out of existence. And then I think you get the Battle of Armageddon. That, again, that's line by line. You can read about that. Mystery Babylon USA on my site, boxofsunglasses.com. But again, the most important right now is probably God's simple salvation plan. And in not too much time that we have left right here. Hopefully back again most Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern time here. Sometimes can't get here. And if I can't, you can always go back and listen to the archives. Good night and God bless.